speaking of the difference between honeyed words versus actions, recently we helped the former premier of Solomon Islands, Malaita province, Daniel Sudani, come to Washington, D.C. to try and warn the U.S. government about what's happening with China. And the U.S. State Department initially rejected his visa. He couldn't come to the U.S. It was only because of two bipartisan congressional letters that the State Department, Biden State Department, finally caved and actually allowed him to come. So we helped fund that trip. But I also want the audience to know that when Daniel Sudani had serious medical issues and the corrupt Solomon Islands Prime Minister Sogavari blocked him from getting that medical treatment, it was you who helped reach out to Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen to get Sudani to Taiwan to get that medical treatment. And I think that's a very clear example of, actions versus words. The U.S. didn't help with that.
Well, I'd like to say Australia, for example. I'm very certain that when Daniel Sudani goes back, he'll land in Australia. He'll be treated like, not even like a tourist, like an unwanted visitor, as he was treated on all his stays in Australia, even when he was Premier of Malaita. And the New Zealand, the same. I don't even think he'll be allowed to come to New Zealand. And you're talking of a united West? A united West fighting a war many thousands of miles from Asia against a country that, in our view, is not relevant to the future of the Eurasian continent as much as some of the countries in Asia are. So, frankly, yes, so far as President Tsai is concerned, this is what I want to say. The biggest assistance that is being given to the KMT is being given by Joe Biden, because you are seeing only basically a lot of optics and no real action. And when even Morris Chang says this, then people are asking President Tsai, because President Tsai has stuck her neck out not just for Daniel Sudani. She's a very courageous person, I'd like to say. And not that I know her very well or anything. We have met a few times officially, as I met leaders in other parts of the world. But the fact is, she has acknowledged that Taiwan is an ally of the United States. And you have got this little lollipop, a major non-NATO ally of the United States. Well, Pakistan is also a major non-NATO ally of the United States, and we all know what that ally is doing. But what are you doing to help this major non-NATO ally? What weapons are you giving to Taiwan? In what quantity? Under what terms? What kind of intelligence are you providing to Taiwan? What kinds of training are you giving to Taiwan? And most importantly, why doesn't the Secretary of State visit Taiwan? Why doesn't the Secretary of Defense visit Taiwan? Why are they so scared of Xi Jinping? I don't understand it. We are there on the front line. Our soldiers are there. You have about 300,000 Chinese soldiers. You have an equal number of Indian soldiers. We are there in the front line. We are going eyeball to eyeball in the seas, in the skies, in cyberspace, in ways that, I'm not particularly keen on discussing here. But you guys are not. You're far away. And you have, the Chinese will be bankrupt without the goods that you're buying. Incidentally, we also have that little thing that we are contributing more than 100 billion to the Chinese kitty. You guys contribute much more. You don't even have the guts, the spine to go there. And how are you going to show that President Tsai was right in putting all her cards on the Western deck? The argument that KMT is doing, this lady has put all her cards on a shaky deck that is clearly not going to help us. That's the one argument they're using day after day after day. And the Chinese are licking their chops at the prospect of Terry Gou of Foxconn coming as the chairman of Taiwan. Because believe me, they will make sure through Foxconn assets in China that they can get Mr. Gou to do exactly what they want, which is take over the island by stealth and undo 8 years of delinking from China and coupling with the United States in particular, in defense, in intelligence, in every which way that President Tsai has been doing. So, the KMT should actually, thank you. They should actually thank President Biden for what he's doing, because he is the best argument for a Taiwanese citizen who doesn't want to become another Ukrainian and doesn't want Taiwan to be a Ukrainian to vote KMT and to vote against a Taiwanese president who has put all her cards on the American table. She hasn't got a single card anywhere else.
So later this year, India is going to be hosting the G20. What do you think India is going to bring to the table? Because it seems like there is this binary option that's being faced with the world of either the West or China. But it seems like there's really a vacuum that could be filled by Indian coalition with other Pacific Island nations, with Taiwan. Is there a third option? What is India going to bring to the table at G20?
Look, as far as Taiwan is concerned, I think a whole lot of relationships are there with Taiwan. I think in various fields they are there, and I have been very active for about 20 years in promoting tech cooperation between India and Taiwan. I would like to see Manipal, my university, become a tech hub, the way Stanford is, for example. And I think if a Taiwanese tech company were to invest there, they'd find a huge amount of talent. But coming to the other issues, don't forget the last two G20 meetings, an agreed statement was torpedoed by Russia and China. Every other member of the G20, including Brazil and South Africa, which, by the way, the Chinese are trying desperately to woo both these countries, Brazil and South Africa stood with India, and we stood with the United States and with the European countries. China and Russia were outliers in a very mild resolution. Very, very mild resolution. It passed muster at Bali, but the same resolution was torpedoed by China and Russia. And this time also, we are not going to basically change our strategic positioning for the sake of getting a so called unanimous resolution at the cost of our national interest and the cost of our strategic interest. And we, at this time also, I believe, it might happen if there is some common sense prevailing in China and the Chinese want at least one Indian in every 1,000 to believe that they can be friendly to us. As of now, hardly anyone believes that. Well, then they will not sabotage us. And the Russians, frankly, as I said, all of us are friends in Russia. We have a long history of very good relations with Russia. That has continued till, as I said, in the Galwan clash, the Russians sent us more arms than the Americans did. That's a statement, let me tell you. And they are very clear. They were pressured by China into going along with China on this statement. It was only the Chinese. And in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which also Narendra Modi is now president, Pakistan and China are working together to sabotage India, along with, in NATO, for example, Turkey. Turkey is acting in a way to sabotage. What is the West doing about any of these countries? Nothing. Nothing at all. You're so obsessed with saving Western civilization by that epitome of Western civilization, which is Ukraine. That epitome of democracy, of freedom, of honesty, of good, whatever you call it, which is Ukraine. And that horrible monster, which is menacing the whole world and for which we need China's help, Russia. So for God, again, G20, yes, India is the chairman of G20 for 2023. Yes, we will invite every country in the G20 without any, exception. Absolutely. I mean, if the West wants to keep away from G20, the West will be harming itself in the eyes of Indian public opinion very significantly. But I don't think the West is going to be, even Joe Biden and Blinken and the other Europeanists, or the European powers, for example, the tone has changed very much over the last 5 or 6 months. Very, very much. And Biden has shown his ability to understand the Indo-Pacific by the fact that there have been no sanctions on India, on S-400, and on buying Russian oil. I'd like to say, so as far as our Western partners are concerned, they will come. South Africa will come. I know Brazil, Chinese have been saying, why do you go to this stupid country? They've been talking to the South Africans informally. Why do you want to go to India? Why you got so many Indians here? What a mess they are creating. Why do you want to go to India? And you have a whole lot of social media activism against Indians in Europe, in North America, in Africa, and actively spread by the Sino-Wahhabi lobby and the Sino-Russian lobbies tentacles. Because outside India, the Russians are very active. In India, as of now, it's not possible to discover any Russian activity in malign activity. But outside India, especially in the United States, the Sino-Russian and Sino-Wahhabi lobby are very, very active. So G20, if you don't get an agreed statement, it's not the end of the world. We will retain our strategic focus. The point is, we need that full-blooded commitment of the United States to the defense of the Indo-Pacific, the commitment that we have demonstrated in the blood of our valiant soldiers, We want that full-blooded commitment, not in terms of human blood, but in terms of the facilities, the requisites that are needed for democracies to prevail. And may I point out, Australia, I mean, Daniel Suidani, for example, if you were to ask for, you have amazing work that you have done. You began the whole thing. I am very happy to say that Heritage, Jeff Smith, he went into it, and that is a great thing. And others also did, brilliant. But the fact is, this government, the Labour government, is, I mean, they're in this, two country situation. The fact is, on technology, you have to decouple. On other things, you need not for the time being. But eventually, you will have to decouple. It's like two walls, and you're sitting with one leg on one side, one leg on the other. The walls are now separating from each other. If you have to accept the reality of Cold War 2.0. My book has just come out a few days ago, Manipal University's press, which is 21st century geopolitics of 21st century. My next book is coming out in August, which is Penguin Random House on Cold War 2.0. It is Cold War 2.0, and we have taken a side. We're not done it, as openly as, for example, some other political. I'm very happy to see President Moon has taken. I mean, President the Suk of South Korea has taken a very clear stand. He is with the United States. Japan has always taken that stand. We have taken that stand by joining the Quad. Some of us were surprised that we were not in AUKUS, but we joined the Quad. What does that mean? What does that particularly mean? If I come to your house for dinner, does it mean that I think of you as an enemy or I think lightly of you? No, it means we are together. So we have taken our side. Joe Biden has taken his side, but Joe Biden has to understand half measures are like half truths. They do more harm than good. And may I point out, in the 1930s, there was a situation in which the real monster was not taken seriously. Again, Russia was seen as the monster. And that monster grew and grew and grew in plain sight. Adolf Hitler was as transparent as Xi Jinping in many ways. He grew in plain sight until it was too late to prevent a war. If you want to prevent a war, if Joe Biden wants to prevent a war, he has to show the United States is not just a partner, not just a reliable partner, but a substantive partner who is willing to go all the way to make a difference in a war that is going to define the contours of the 21st century. Your children and grandchildren are going to be the victims or the winners in that particular war that is going to take place, that is taking place.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Professor Nalapat. We'll leave some links below to your books that are just coming out, including some of your articles. It's very fascinating, and it's always great to, get a perspective outside of what we might hear in the U.S. from Western media to just see what else is going on in the world and how other countries are dealing with the threat of the Chinese Communist Party.
I would just like to say, God bless the United States of America, God bless India, and may I point out that this alliance is critical for the future of the democratic world. The two biggest democracies must be allies, complete and total allies in the war that is upon us, the Cold War 2.0. And I am very firmly of the view that I have trust in the American people. Look what happened to Daniel Suidani. The State Department refused him his visa, and you guys put pressure, and he got a visa. And then the US Congress people stepped in magnificently, and he was given some of the honor that he deserves. Nobody in the administration, of course, but at least in the US Congress. Why? Because that's how democracy works. We've got checks and balances. There's no such thing in China. In China, there's just one. Let me end by saying the Chinese people are not the Chinese Communist Party members, about 98 million. The Chinese Communist Party members are not the senior members of the Chinese Communist Party, totally different from them. The senior members of the Chinese Communist Party are not the top members of the Chinese Communist Party. They're again a universe different from them. And some of us have had the good fortune to go through all the different layers. And frankly, because we are from India, we're not seen as a Western power, as a technologically whatever it is. They're a little less guarded, let's say. in their messaging when talking to us. And secondly, as I never take the big Chinese media seriously, the big communist media. I take small little provincial papers. I read them because that reflects the truth. And every single provincial paper is talking about the imminent takeover of Taiwan by General Secretary Xi Jinping. They're all talking about it. The Taiwanese are reading that. We are reading that. You guys should be reading that.